Let's go ahead with the blocking stage of our run cycle. We will now work on the down pose, also called passing pose, where the contacting foot is more or less aligned with the center of gravity of our character, and the opposite foot is passing or almost passing the center of gravity depending on the kind of run you're doing. Note that the torso root has a bit of left to right motion, where the weight is shifting toward the contacting foot. But this left to right motion needs to be more subtle than on a walk cycle, or your character will feel very heavy. Next pose, I'm not thinking about the timing. So we have 4 poses on 12 frames. I will key every 3 frames. So I will jump on frame 3 and key all the controllers. Press I in the action editor and choose all channels. During the blocking stage, it's important to key the whole character on each main poses to avoid any foot sliding or weird interpolation of the different controllers. Lower the right foot to the ground level, cancel the rotation on the foot roll, and place it under the root of the character. See what I told you in the previous video. In this case, I need to slightly raise my character on the first pose, because on the down pose I feel like he's too low compared to the previous one. So I will push the character up, selecting both the feet and the torso root controller. As he's pushing on his right leg, his hips will raise on the right side. And the hips should not be twisted that much since we are in the passing pose, and the shoulders and hips will be kind of aligned with the feet. Here is one of the most important tips of this video. Whenever I'm building a new pose, if I can't get a good result right away, I will cancel the rotation of the torso root and repose it. Press Alt-R to cancel the rotation on the hips and the torso root, and then rebuild the pose. It's better to do so than trying to match the pose from the previous one if we have made some transformation that doesn't fit. You will be fighting with your rig, and at the end of the blocking you will have a lot of weird pose in your different controller. While it may look kind of okay, your rig will be kind of broken. So trust me, you may take a little more time blocking your poses this way, but whenever you feel like the character is not responding or the rig is not responding properly, just cancel the rotation and rebuild the pose from scratch. You will save then a lot of time during the polishing. Back to our pose, don't forget that the feet have a slight right to left movement while in the air. Position of the foot depends on the people and on the speed at which you are running. Some people will have their feet going on the outside during the passing pose, others on the inside. Since we are blocking the poses, don't forget to select all your keys and set them to constant interpolation. Regarding the global arm position, you will generally keep your arms close to your body the faster you run. So basically, what you have to think about when working on your poses is the faster, the straighter. Once you've matched your video reference or the reference provided, don't hesitate to fine-tweak the first pose, then the second pose. Maybe lean a bit more forward the character to make him look like a little more dynamical. That we will surely refine those poses when we will be working on the curves. Let's now jump onto the push pose. This is one of the most beautiful and iconic extreme of a run cycle. This is where the contacting leg is straight back and the leading arm is at its maximum speed, as the arm and the shoulder are pulling the body upward. In the first video, the leading arm and shoulder will hit their extremes before the feet. The fists generally don't have a big side-to-side motion. It can be tempting to cross the right hand toward the left shoulder, but that's kind of a mistake. You will get a cool pose, but a less realistic run cycle. In the case of this exercise, even if we do a slightly stylized run cycle, try to match something pretty realistic. You can make then some badass run cycle once you master the run cycle principles. So I will go on frame 6. I will erase the heel of the contacting leg and cancel any rotation on the toes. Then I will move the leg backward and slightly raise the torso. I again advise you to use the foot roll controller to orientate the foot and make the toes slightly dragging backward. As usual for this kind of cycle, the hips will be twisting toward the forward leg, and the torso root and chest controller will be twisting the opposite direction. The left shoulder needs to be raised back, and the left elbow is almost at its highest point. I've slightly bent the left forearm and left hand forward to make them drag a bit. I will then raise the right shoulder and push it forward, and I will raise the right arm, twist it so that I keep the face clear from the right hand. The final touch is to make the legs, feet and knees a little straighten, so that we get a good aerodynamism and a pose that tells you, hey, I'm going forward. This relies a lot on lines of action, but we will deal with this animation principle a little later in this course. For the time being, just look at how the silhouette tells us that the character is pushing up and forward. The last pose we will have to build is the up pose. This is going to be pretty straightforward, since this is when most of our controllers hit their extreme poses. Make sure you're twisting the chest and the hips to the maximum. The left shoulder and left elbow are at their highest point. So does the right shoulder and the right hand. And then pose the feet according to the reference, making sure that the right leg is dragging back with the toes also dragging to get a nice arrow shape of the leg that points toward the previous position of the foot in space. And then, as usual, don't hesitate to rework each controller to get a better pose. Don't forget to double check the video reference, as you may get some more details, like the left elbow is getting higher and the left forearm is slightly bending inward. Don't forget to slightly twist the arm to keep the head clear. And finally, you should scrub through your animation as often as possible so that you can fine-tweak the previous poses so that the flow looks great. Once I'm done with that, I will make sure I add a keyframe on all the channels of this key. And then I will go back on frame 0, in the 3D viewport select all the controller, press Ctrl C to copy the pose, and then go to frame 12, and in the 3D viewport press Ctrl Shift V to mirror the pose. Then I just have to repeat the process, go on frame 3, copy the pose, then go 12 frames later on frame 15 and paste the mirror pose, and repeat the process. Finally, I will just have to duplicate all the keys from frame 0 onto frame 24. Once I'm done and it seems that the cycles work, I will insert a keyframe on every single keys I have created, so that all my controllers are keyed and we have our linear cycle. As we can finally see our whole cycle, we can finally check what's working and what's not. In my case, I feel like the animation lack of dynamism. To get a more dynamic run cycle, you can push the torso root forward and lean your character forward too a little more. When building a run cycle, the more horizontal you get, the more dynamism you will have. If you think about the stereotypical anime ninja run cycle, like in Naruto, the legs are generally pushed back while the torso is pushed forward and is almost horizontal. Once you've tweaked all your poses, don't forget to again mirror them on each keys. Here is the result I got from our blocking stage. The run cycle looks pretty cool, pretty natural, not too dynamic, not too stylized, which is perfect to learn our fundamentals. Since we've been keying every free frame in some kind of linear fashion, the run cycle works. What we can do now is offset some of the key poses to slightly stylize our run cycle. For a light, skilled and agile character, we want to favorize the airborne pose. The idea is to hold the up pose a little longer and switch from the straight pose, down pose and pushing pose a little faster. The process in itself is not super complicated and not super interesting. I'm just moving some keys until I get to the right timing. So in the end, I've set the down or passing pose on frame 3 and 15, the pushing pose on frame 5 and 17, so that we have only 2 frames between the down and pushing pose, so that the foot is rapidly sliding on the ground before we get back into the air, with the up pose on frame 8 and 20.